Picture a beach at sunset. Waves rolling in, children building castles, tourists snapping photos of something they think will always be there. Nobody worries about running out of sand. It seems as endless as the ocean itself. But here's a strange truth hiding in plain sight. Sand is now one of the most fought-over resources on Earth. People are jailed for stealing it. Entire islands have vanished because of it. And in some markets, the right kind of sand costs more per ton than anyone would ever expect. This isn't a story about beaches. It's a story about concrete, glass, silicon chips, and the hidden material that built the modern world. And it's a story about what happens when we finally start running low on something we assumed was infinite. Let's start with a number that sounds impossible. Humans use around 50 billion tons of sand and gravel every single year. That's enough to build a wall 27 meters high and 27 meters wide around the entire planet, every 12 months. Where does it all go? Concrete, roads, glass, computer chips, even toothpaste and cosmetics contain fine silica sand. Sand is the second most consumed natural resource on Earth, right after water. So why is this suddenly a crisis? Because not all sand is created equal, and that distinction changes everything. Desert sand, the kind that stretches across the Sahara and Golden Dunes, is almost useless for construction. Wind erosion makes desert grains too round and smooth. They don't lock together, which means concrete made from desert sand crumbles under pressure. The sand that builders actually need comes from riverbeds, floodplains, and ocean shores. Water shapes these grains differently, giving them rough, angular edges that interlock like puzzle pieces. That's the sand holding up your house, your office building, and the sidewalk beneath your feet. And that specific kind of sand is running out fast. Rivers only produce so much of it, and they produce it slowly, over centuries of erosion and sediment flow. Humans, on the other hand, are extracting it faster than nature can replace it. In some regions, sand is now being pulled out of riverbeds 10 times faster than it can naturally regenerate. This is where the story turns dark. Because when demand skyrockets and supply can't keep up, illegal markets step in. In parts of India, criminal networks known as sand mafias have taken control of local extraction. Journalists investigating these operations have been threatened. Some have been killed. Villages have been terrorized by armed groups dredging riverbanks illegally under cover of night. It sounds almost unbelievable. Organized crime built around sand? But when a resource becomes essential and scarce at the same time, someone will always find a way to profit from the gap. Meanwhile, in Southeast Asia, an entirely different kind of disappearance is happening. Singapore, a small but wealthy nation, has expanded its land area by more than 20% over the last 60 years, almost entirely through land reclamation. To do that, Singapore imports enormous quantities of sand from neighboring countries. Indonesia banned sand exports to Singapore back in 2007. Citing serious environmental damage and the loss of small islands caused by excessive dredging. Yes, you heard that right. Islands have physically disappeared because their sand was mined away and shipped off to build someone else's coastline. This raises an uncomfortable question. If sand can build new land in one place while erasing land in another, who actually owns it? And who decides how much is too much? There's no easy answer because sand extraction sits in a strange legal gray zone in many countries. Regulations exist, but enforcement is often weak, especially in developing regions where the economic pressure to keep building is intense. Now let's talk about why demand has exploded so dramatically in the first place. The world's cities are growing at a staggering pace. More people are moving into urban centers than at any point in human history. Concrete jungles are expanding upward and outward, and every single building, bridge, and highway needs sand as its foundation. China alone used more concrete between 2011 and 2013 than the United States used during the entire 20th century. Let that sink in for a moment. 3 years versus 100 years. That's the scale of the construction boom driving global sand demand. And it's not just skyscrapers. Sand is essential to the technology we carry in our pockets. Silicon, the backbone of every microchip, is refined from a specific type of high-purity quartz sand. That means your smartphone, your laptop, and every data center powering the internet all trace their existence back to sand. Without it, there is no Silicon Valley, quite literally. Solar panels need it too. The renewable energy revolution, meant to save the planet from carbon emissions, depends heavily on silicon extracted from sand. It's a strange irony. The materials fighting climate change are pulling from the same limited resource, driving environmental destruction elsewhere. So how does gold factor into all of this? Gold is treasured because it's rare, durable, and nearly impossible to fake. It has symbolic power built over thousands of years of human history. Sand, on the other hand, has always been treated as worthless. Cheap, abundant, disposable. That perception is exactly why the coming shortage is so dangerous. Nobody planned for scarcity because nobody thought scarcity was possible. When the right kind of construction sand becomes difficult to source, prices in local markets can spike dramatically, sometimes multiplying overnight due to shortages, smuggling costs, and black market control. In some regions, illegally sourced sand now sells for prices that rival costlier building materials, an outcome nobody could have predicted a generation ago. It's not that a truckload of sand is worth more than a truckload of gold. It's that the world quietly built its entire civilization on the assumption that sand would always be cheap and available, and that assumption is starting to crack. Let's step back and look at the environmental cost, because this isn't only an economic story. Dredging rivers for sand destroys aquatic habitats and disrupts the natural flow of sediment that keeps riverbanks stable. Fish populations decline. Riverbeds deepen unnaturally, which can cause bridges to collapse and groundwater levels to drop. In Vietnam, extensive sand mining along the Mekong River has caused significant land subsidence. Entire sections of riverbank have simply slid away into the water, taking homes and farmland with them. Coastal sand mining creates similar problems. Removing sand from beaches accelerates erosion, leaving coastlines more vulnerable to storm surges and rising sea levels, the very forces climate change is already intensifying. It creates a brutal cycle. We mine sand to build cities that protect us from environmental change, while the mining itself makes coastlines less resilient to that very change. So what happens if we truly run out of usable sand? Some experts warn this could become one of the defining resource crises of the 21st century, sitting quietly behind more talked about issues like oil and water. But there is hope, and it comes from an unexpected place. Innovation born out of necessity. Engineers are experimenting with alternatives. Crushed recycled glass can replace natural sand in some concrete mixtures. Desert sand, once considered useless, is being tested with new binding techniques that might make its round grains usable after all. Researchers in Australia and the Netherlands have explored plastic waste combined with sand substitutes to create new composite building materials. It's early-stage technology, but it points toward a future where our dependency on river and ocean sand could actually decrease. Recycled construction debris, known as crushed concrete aggregate, is also gaining traction as a partial sand replacement. It's not a perfect substitute yet, but every ton of recycled material is one less ton pulled from a riverbed somewhere. Some countries are also tightening regulations, tracking sand extraction through satellite monitoring to catch illegal dredging operations before they cause irreversible damage. Technology that once helped us exploit the planet is now being turned toward protecting it. There's something deeply human about this whole story. We build our lives, quite literally, from the ground up, using materials we never stopped to think about. Sand held together the pyramids of Giza, mixed into ancient mortar thousands of years ago. It shaped the glass in medieval cathedral windows. And now it forms the silicon heart of the device you're probably watching this video on right now. We rarely question the things that seem endless, until the moment they aren't. Water felt endless once. Clean air felt endless once. And sand, quite possibly, is next in that line. So the next time you walk along a beach, watching the waves smooth every grain beneath your feet, remember that you're looking at one of the most quietly essential materials on the planet. Not gold. Not oil. Sand. It built the world we live in, and how we manage what's left of it may quietly shape the world our children inherit. If this story changed the way you'll look at a simple handful of sand, that's exactly what this channel is here for. We dig into the strange hidden economics behind the everyday things nobody questions. Subscribe to the Economics of Weird Things, because the next impossible truth about the ordinary world around you might be just one video away.